Hello, everyone. I'm Tyler Dobbs, Senior Director of Government Affairs for the Academy of Model Aeronautics.
Hi, I'm Lee Ray, Social Media Manager for the AMA.
We thank you all for joining us today on this video. We wanted to sit down and discuss the FAA Recognized Identification Area, or FRIA, application process. And as many of you know, getting your flying site recognized as a FRIA is one way to satisfy the upcoming remote ID rule without the need for a broadcast module on or in your aircraft. So most of our AMA clubs do want to reach out and request FRIA status, and this is going to be a tutorial on how to answer some of the questions and walk you through some of the mapping requirements that are on the FAA's application. So go ahead and dive in. And I have Lee Ray joining me today because Lee is part of the FRIA application team. This is being led by the AMA Clubs
Amigos.
There you go. The AMA Clubs Department and specifically Alona Main and Lisa Johnson and Lee stepping in to help. And the other two are plugging away at submitting applications as we speak, but we wanted to touch base with our club officers and specifically the FRIA points of contact to answer some of these frequently asked questions. So we'll just go ahead and dive in, Lee, with the AMA questionnaire that was sent out to club officers at the end of November. And it's important to know as we go through this questionnaire, this gives AMA the information that's needed to submit on behalf of the club. We do that at the FAA Drone Zone. These are the exact same questions that we are answering. We're just doing it on behalf of the club. The only additions are like the AMA club name and the AMA number for the points of contact. But everything else, it's essentially word for word from the FAA Drone Zone. So when you click the link, the club at this point has already determined who the point of contact is going to be. That's going to be one person. They're going to be in charge of being the liaison between AMA and the FAA and helping us through this process if we have any questions on specific airspace or ground use that's being used. Just enter some information here and walk through. And Lee, feel free to jump in if I miss anything as I'm sharing my screen here.
You're doing great, Tyler.
All right.
I'll just add that the point of contact is, as Tyler said, the person that will reach out to you to confirm that the boundaries we've set are correct. So you'll work with your club to make sure that it's correct as far as permission and access to all the land around your flying site.
So enter your name, first name, last name, your AMA number, an email address that you check frequently because AMA will likely have questions as we move forward and the FAA could reach out. When you get to the phone number section, there is a drop-down box over to the left, and it's important that you pull that down even though it shows the U.S. and add the 1 at the beginning here. This declaration box also needs checked. That just gives AMA the authority to enter this information on behalf of you and your club. Next, we will go down to the primary point of contact. For this, we need a physical address. A P.O. box will not work. The FAA wants to know your actual location that you live, so please enter it. If your mailing address is the same, no need to enter this second portion. And then with that, we can move on to the next page. Next, we get into the actual FRIA, or the FAA Recognized Identification Area, your club site for all intents and purposes. Just put a generic name in here.
And I'm going to jump in here real quick because this is the stuff that we double check your data. And for the club name, it needs to match the charter name with the AMA. So if you go to modelaircraft.org/club-name-search, you'll get this screen right here. And then you can search through your name or club number, find your club, and just make sure it matches right here. Because when we submit the application to the FAA, we use the club name and the club number as the application record.
And I'll point out as we go through the video today, there'll be a number of links that you share. You're free to pause this video at any time and write those links down, and then we can move forward. The physical address of the proposed FRIA location. If your flying site does have an address, please enter it. We understand that some do not. You could fly in the middle of cornfields where there's a dirt road that goes to the actual site. If that's the case, then we're just going to simply put an NA in the address box. The rest are required, so fill out the city, the town, and state, zip code, etc. If there's no address, please provide a description on how to get there, even if it's, take Interstate 65, 3 miles and turn north on Highway 1 to first dirt road on the left. Something that would help us determine, and the FAA determine, if we were driving to the flying site, how would we get there?
Yeah, if you're the point of contact, I encourage you to pull up your website for your club. It's possible that all those directions, are already in there, so you can just cut and paste right into that box.
Right. Well, just for this purpose, I'll enter AMA's address here, which is in Muncie. Since there is an address, we're not going to need a description. We can search that on Google Maps and get any information we would need. The next portion of the questionnaire discusses the actual flying site, and we are going to need the Latin long of that site location. For this, I'm just going to enter a generic location. There are two options when we determine the airspace and ground that will be used. And typically when we think of the FAA, we think of just airspace. They don't really care so much as the actual ground, but what airspace is the club or an individual using. For FRIA purposes, it's a little different because they're trying to identify both the aircraft that's in the air as well as the operator that's on the ground. So when we're discussing FRIA status and submitting information for it, we need both. It's the airspace is going to be a continuation of the ground. And there's two options for us submitting this. One is we just put in a radius. We have a center point here with the Latin long, and maybe 1,000-foot radius would be perfect for this flying site. And
do you have your sample club available?
I'm sorry?
Do you have your sample club online?
Yeah, sure. Let me grab that. So in that scenario, let's just say this is the flying site here. You can see the pilot stations in front of this little shelter. Let's say that I'll select a point and say that's the generic Latin long that I gave earlier. If you're
I'm going to pause real quick and let people know who are watching who maybe not be familiar with Google Maps, but if you go to maps.google.com and you can find your site, move your hand around, find your state and city, but also turn on the satellite layer so you can see this. But notice when he left clicked the pin down, the GPS coordinates appeared at the bottom. So if you're trying to find out what those are, that's how you cut and paste them into the application.
That's right. That's right, Lee. So we have our center point here of our runway. We would enter this Latin long, and then for a radius, you would take your mouse and you would get close to that point. You would right click on it, which brings up this drop down box, scroll to the bottom, left click on measure distance, come out to another point where you would guess would be close to 1,000-foot radius. Select it. Here we're at 1,200, so we'll just left click and we'll drag it a little closer to 1,000 feet or roughly. And we will see if 1,000-foot radius would interfere with any structures, flying over any vehicles, any busy roadways, anything that could be reason to deny FRIA status based off of the radius. In this scenario, there's really nothing.
Yeah, red flags are government property, county utility power lines, or utility centers, mainly highways and residential areas. So if you have any coverage over those spots, that's a red flag for the FAA.
Right. So for this flying site, using the one center point with a radius would work well. We all recognize that if this is the flight line, most flying doesn't go behind us, but this is an option that the FAA has given us. So we could use that in that scenario. If that would not work, if there would be, properties, neighborhoods, things like that, we have a second option. And for that, I'll let Lee take over. If that's the case, and a radius will not work, there's a little checkbox here, which says we need someone from AMA to contact us because we're going to need help creating a shapefile. Just check that box and delete the radius.
Yeah. And by the way, if you're just not sure of either one, click the checkbox. That's kind of our little alert to make sure that we help you out. So I'm going to bring up a club that I was working on, and they're near a shoreline and they're also near a major highway. And their first request was to have a radius of 2,500 feet. but you can see that's just covers too much area. That's a public beach and highway. So in this scenario, we're going to create a polygon with multiple vertices. And in this scenario, I talked with the point of contact and we drew out, I'm just going to sit here and use Google Maps. We drew out a grid, a polygon map of what we felt fit their standard everyday flight box, like where they normally flew. And if you look at this image, you can see back here, this is a park area that's got open roads and a public parking lot. They never fly back here. If we had done a radius, we would have been covering areas that were really not necessarily meant for flying. And in this area, their normal flight box, or possibly they lose a plane in this area right here, this is where you would expect to see the aircraft. I would send an image of this to the point of contact. They would look at it. If they had any changes, they could also use Google Maps with the same polygon tool to take a screenshot, send it back to me. Working together, we'll figure out what those points are. And then I will take each GPS coordinate from the polygon and submit that as a polygon application for you.
That's right. And we are getting some large radius. I mean, in the initial applications, I know, Lee, I think you said you had like a 4,000 foot radius request. I had a 6,000 foot, which is essentially, you know, over 2 miles across the flying site. There could be a scenario where that makes sense. I know that you did a sod farm, and we had a discussion on that a couple of weeks ago, and I had someone else bring that up to me yesterday. Maybe you fly to sod farm and the farmer moves you around frequently. Maybe it makes sense to request that all as one large site or multiple small sites. Those are going to be on a case-by-case basis. So, reach out to AMA in that scenario if you're going to be requesting an 8,000 or 9,000 foot radius. That probably is going to be a red flag for us, or at the very least the FAA. We're probably going to reach out to you anyway, but we do understand there are a few unique clubs out there that do need a larger spot, just simply because they do get moved around because of farming techniques and so forth.
Yeah, I want to let people know, this is our little casual talk here. Most of the FRIA sites that I have been submitting that are done are about a 1,500 foot radius, or at least distance from the runway to the furthest point. And that's about average. I'm not saying it is, but I did have a club, kind of like what Tyler said. It's in the middle of a sod farm, and they also have paramotorists fly there. That was given 2,500 foot radius, and it's perfect because of how they fly lots of gliders. So we are working one-on-one with each of you. If you click that checkbox, you're going to work with an individual, and we'll help you get there.
That's correct. So once we get that determination, whether we use a radius or we create a shapefile that gets verified and approved by the club, we then move into, is your site in controlled airspace or uncontrolled airspace? If it's in controlled airspace, which is roughly 325, 350 AMA clubs, that requires that you have a letter of agreement with the air traffic control facility. You can go to this link if you're unsure. If you fall within the blue shading of these grids, and if you zoom in a little bit more, Lee, you can kind of see that dotted outline around the edge. If you fall within these grids, then you're at the surface area of controlled airspace. You require a letter of agreement to operate. Those clubs have already went through that process. If you created a new flying site recently and you haven't been through the letter of agreement process in controlled airspace, you need to reach out to AMA, someone in the Gov department, and we'll get started on that. But this next question is, are you at a location that requires a letter of agreement? If so, select yes, then select upload and submit from your computer a copy of that letter of agreement. That will be attached to your questionnaire, and we will submit that on your behalf to the FAA. If you have a letter of agreement but you can't find it, please contact AMA and we'll help you track that down. Either we'll have it or we'll reach out to the FAA to get that. The majority of you will be in uncontrolled airspace or Class G airspace and will not need a letter of agreement. So for this purpose, we'll go ahead and select no. Go down here and answer this question next. Are we in controlled airspace at a site that we've already chartered with AMA? Or have we moved locations and AMA hasn't been made aware of that? We haven't charted our location yet. Or again, the vast majority of you, are you in uncontrolled airspace? Select those those options.
So I want to review, go back up a little bit so we can make sure everybody's, this has been one of those questions we have been receiving, and go up a little bit further for me, Tyler. So if you answered yes to the LOA, then the next two questions on the fixed site apply to you. If you answered no on the LOA, then uncontrolled airspace is the box you check. So that's how it works. I just want to make sure you understand that. So if you say no at the top, you're going to say uncontrolled at the bottom.
Yeah, good point, Lee. Description of purpose and need. AMA has a template for this, so we'll add that language, and I think Lee can share that on the screen, and folks can pause and read that if they would like. So you're welcome to add what you would like to this area. If you don't have anything to add outside of the language, here it is, that Lee is providing, then this box would be great to share any, special information with. If you're on a sod farm, if you requested a 5,000 foot radius, here would be maybe, hey, I requested 5,000 feet because we operate on 2,500 acres and we get moved around from corner to corner every 3 months or something along those lines. Something to let us know, hey, this is a unique situation. That's why they requested.
So by the way, you'll notice that the description of purpose of need is an asterisk. So you must put something in there. You can put NA, but we're trying to modify that so it'll already fill ours in. So you have the option to just hit enter and can move on, or again, add more material if you'd like.
Correct. Next page, expected utilization of the proposed FRIAs. This is where you're going to estimate how many flights you have each week. A flight is when you take off and land. From takeoff to landing, that is one flight. Let's just say on average you have 100 flights a week. And the typical flight time is between 10 and 15 minutes. So we'll just throw 12 in.
Yeah, I would say the minimum number should be 25 on the first answer. And we're seeing normal numbers of 10 to 15 for flight time.
Right. Yeah, I think we've had some clubs submit even 1,000.
I had 500. So, but yes, if you have a big club and you fly a lot, please put a big number there. If it matches.
Use realistic numbers, that's for sure. Next will be the types of aircraft that you fly and the different power sources for those aircraft. So we have fixed wing electric, fixed wing gas, helicopter, multi-rotor, so forth. So select what types of aircraft that you fly at that location. Do you operate at dusk, during dusk and dawn on a regular basis? We'll go ahead and put yes. Do you operate at night? If you're in uncontrolled airspace, it's possible that you do. So we'll go ahead and put yes, we operate at night. And then the last question is, how many additional sites will you be requesting for FRIA status? And that's just for internal use. AMA wants to keep track of how many we still have. We're doing this in batches. This first questionnaire that we sent out was for your primary site. We wanted to know your most important site. After we get through these initial ones, we'll be sending out another email to the same points of contact to say, okay, we're ready for the second site, the third site, and so on. So we'll go ahead and put that we have 2 additional sites that we would like to request as FRIAs. Hit preview, and that brings us to one last chance for us to review before we hit submit and send this off. When we hit submit, that goes to the inbox that Lee monitors and works out of, as well as the clubs department. And you will also receive an email from the point of contact email address that you submitted, just usually within a couple minutes. So this all looks good. At that point, we will hit submit, and you will get a little message thanking you for submitting. We'll all get the emails. It'll go into the queue basically, and that's where Lee and others from the clubs department will be submitting these on the FAA drone zone to the FAA. This is the process to provide AMA the information for submissions. Please don't email myself or Lee or anybody from clubs saying, here's all the information for my club. If it doesn't come in this questionnaire, you have not submitted a questionnaire for a FRIA application. We have 2,000 and some flying sites and possibly more by the end of all of this. So it is important that we use the process that's in place. any submission other than this questionnaire is going to slow things down for you dramatically. You're basically going to be put to the side, and we will get to you once we go through the normal process. So please don't reach out, through email. Don't use the web question process that AMA has. We've received a few submissions like that, and we have to let you know, sorry, this is not how we're doing it. Here's the link. Please use the appropriate pathway.
And so far, we've received over 500 applications, and every time they come in, we're all tagging a set of them. And the longest part is approving the FRIA map. And mainly because we're doing a lot of polygons, and not because the radiuses don't work, but in fact, it's probably better to do the polygon because you have typically a flying site that's in front of your runway. So we ask that as soon as you submit an application and you get a response from somebody in our team confirming the grid that we've created, please respond quickly, because there are some that I'm holding on to waiting for someone to reply. So those are applications in the wings. So if you are the point of contact, be patient. There are several in front of you if you haven't submitted yours yet. But I do ask, if you see an email from FRIA, anyone basically from modelaircraft.org, please work with us to get your application approved.
Yeah, and submitting this questionnaire does, again, this isn't your application to the FAA. It comes to AMA, and then we put in that application on your behalf as a CBO. This could take months before we get approvals or denials. This whole process triggered a National Environmental Protection Act from decades ago. The FAA has to finalize that process before they can begin approving or denying these FRIA sites. It will likely be spring or summer of next year before they get through that process. So it will not surprise me if clubs do not get a response for many, many months. If we get to that point and your site does get denied, we are being told that there will be the possibility to mitigate the reason why it was denied. If that is reasonable, if it's in a location where there's a security concern or something that simply we have no control over, obviously, then that would be an issue. However, if it's something that can be mitigated, then AMA would assist you with that, and we would reapply on your behalf. But once you submit this questionnaire, just know that Lee and the others from the team will get that application submitted just as quickly as they can. However, it will likely be months before we hear anything.
There you go. We hope that was helpful for you. In a little 20 minutes, it was better than our first attempt. We ran a little long because we were very talkative, but we do hope that answers most of your questions. And if you have any more, you can always go to modelaircraft.org and reach out and contact us through any of the links there. Also, our email for this is fria@modelaircraft.org. Happy to help you guys, but do understand, be patient, because we do have a lot of submissions.
For sure. Well, thank you all for your time. And again, as Lee mentioned, reach out to anybody here at AMA HQ. And if we don't have your answer, we will find somebody who does, and we're happy to help you all through this process.